Hello and welcome, everyone. Hope everybody's having a good Friday. So far, our weather here has been pretty nice. We got a good amount of snow last night, and it is actually snowing right now as we speak, so that's always fun. Luckily, we are in here, inside, and writing some code, not outside driving around in the snow. So this is DevChatter. My name is Brendan, and today my plan is to work on some of our Twitch chatbot. If you are interested in talking about, working on, or looking at anything else, go ahead and shout it out, let me know. I am open to whatever you guys want to work on. Just go ahead and let me know. First off, I want to go ahead and thank C# Fritz, whose auto-host just pointed at us. So, thank you for that. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So, I want to talk a little bit about the chatbot that we've been building. It is written in .NET Core and C#, and we have EF Core is our data access that we're using. And we are storing a bit of fake data, which is right now just the commands and responses that our bot runs. I'm going to go ahead and run our bot just so that you guys can see what it does. I forget how annoying it is right now because we're just using a bit of fake data to set up some messages that go on an interval. And as we're developing this, we've been switching back and forth between having that interval be every 1 minute that it sends out a message versus every 15 minutes. So, as I said, it's a C# application. Right now we run as a console app, but almost nothing's in there, so at any point we could switch this to having an actual UI or being a web app living on Azure, wherever we want to put it. Most of it's just .NET Core libraries. We just do this so that we can have the program spin up and run, and it sits in an infinite loop here doing nothing. And at some point we could put an actual interface in the command line, but I don't think it's going to live there forever, so I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to put the effort into that because it's going to disappear. So when I mentioned that we don't really have anything in here, that's what I mean. Okay, so as you guys will notice, I just want to point out that the bot did send out its message, so it is set to do that once every minute, so I am going to kill it so that we don't get that message once every minute. And I'm going to go ahead and switch it back to doing that every 15 minutes. So, okay, so I did notice that we had a good amount of people show up who are from the C# Fritz host. So I actually want to cover a couple of things that he was talking about. So anybody that was in there, when we were having our discussion of repositories and specifications and repositories of T, I did put in a bit of repository in here. So it's pretty simple at the moment, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what we've got here. So let's bring that up. The repository is going to live in core, and actually it's not in data, which I should probably move. So we've been building this on stream, and for the most part, just writing it as we go, with suggestions from people, with the plan being that when I've got spare time, I'll shift things around to where they should live and do a little bit of code cleanup. Haven't done as much of that as I should, but I will go ahead and cover what we've got here. So in Fritz's stream, he talked about the iRepository, and I want to cover this a little bit just because I think it's an awesome thing. I'm actually working on some blog posts that are about this generic repository concept and why I like it. And I am going to build it into our bot as we go, so you'll see it here. So if you go ahead and follow the DevChatter stream, you will be able to see this repository develop organically. So for now, I put in 4 basic method calls. The repository has a list method, which you can call this whatever you want. It's essentially, this is the one that's going to give us an enumerable. So whether it's list, enumerable, doesn't really matter. And then the other one we have the ability to create. Actually, I really should change the order of these. I don't actually have a single right now because I'm just doing this for collections of commands and messages, interval messages, things like that. So I don't have a single. I might put that in the repository just to have it here, so that when I do need it, it's there. And I know there's a little bit of Yagni concept, but I have a feeling at some point I'm going to want to store something in the database and get a specific item back out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I mean, by that same concept, that's the reason I have create and update, because these aren't actually getting used anywhere yet. I just know that eventually I'll probably want them. So what I'm going to go ahead and create here, and I'll show you guys how we're going to set this up, is I'm going to make a single method. Now my goal for today is actually to add in the ability to respond when someone follows the Twitch stream. And I will add that in, but I also want to get to this, because it sounds fun. So I'll say I want to get a single T, and I could say single, I could say, you know, single or default or whatever, but I want to get a single item, and that item is going to be of type T, and type T has to be a data item. I guess I don't need that restriction, except for the fact that I'm planning on doing a specification that probably needs that restriction. So, man, I'm really debating leaving that off for now. Anyway, so I made data item be essentially the base item that we use, and the reason I did that is because I wanted to be able to put a few simple properties on there, things like the status of an item. I figured almost everything we have is going to be active, inactive, something like that, and I may remove or tweak this type restriction that we've got here, but we'll see. It's pretty easy to change. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to put a specification of T and call that my spec. Now, the reason I'm doing this is this essentially gives me a way to tell the repository, hey, I want to get a single item from you. And it's going to be an item that matches this criteria. So this is kind of like in Link, how when you've got a collection, you might want to do a dot single. And many of you probably know that when you use that dot single, it actually lets you pass in a little lambda expression inside of the parens. And that lambda expression is what filters down to what you want to get. And that's sort of what our specification is going to get here. Except instead of just being a function, our specification gives us a little bit more control. And the reason I want to do it this way is that I want our specification eventually to include things like whether or not we should attempt to access, whether we should store something in cache, in the cache layer or something like that when we've done this. And our specification is actually a very good way of handling that sort of thing. So the specification can help us with that, and also it will allow us to... oh, yes, I didn't put on presenter, thank you. Yep, I will go ahead and turn on presenter mode so that you can actually read that. Thank you, Ace Flames here. So what the specification actually gets us is... So I have it right here, but eventually I know I'm going to add in things like a should cache and some other things like that. I will also probably have on these specifications... you're welcome, Ace Flames here. Yeah, you're welcome, guys. Sorry about that. I had it on earlier today, and I shut it off while I was watching Fritz's stream, because I was like, I don't need more screen real estate, because I can get more vertical lines if I turn it off. So anyway, some of the other items, so like, I mentioned we might have a boolean for whether or not we should cache this, but there's some other things we might put in here as well. For example, anyone here who's used any kind of ORM is probably used to the idea that occasionally you want to pull out more than one entry from more than one table. So in Entity Framework, for example, you do that with includes. So you'd be like, yeah, I want to access this item, and then I want to include these related items that are connected through this foreign key. And so our specification, we could actually specify on this that we want to include certain things. So I'm going to give you an example of what a specification looks like, because I have one in here, and I've got this in here. It's very simple right now, and there are a lot of different specifications that you could build, but I want to show you a simple one. So this one is just for a basic data item, and that means that anything that is inheriting from our data item base class, which means that it has a property of data item status, which I put in here just so we could have active, draft, etc., because I wanted to put this in sort of as an example, so that's really the only reason it's in here for now, is just so that we can have this piece working. And that lets us say, hey, yeah, if you've drafted a command or a message or a command or something like that, but you don't want it running yet, then you can have it essentially turned off so that only an active message is actually going to be going. So that's what our bot currently does. So you might set something up and you'd say, hey, yeah, I'm going to build this game into my bot where people can, gamble their points or whatever. And when you do that, you might decide, hey, you know what, we're doing a special stream today, I want to turn that off. Then you might want to go in and configure that to be off for your bot. So that's sort of the idea with having a status flag. And so this lets us say that we want to get only the active ones. So the only... Hey, thank you for following. Which is actually convenient because that's actually we're going to be really building today. But I wanted to show this really quickly just because it came up for a decent number of the people that are watching. So the only one I'm actually using right now is the data item policy active only. And so what that means is I'm essentially passing in a by status of active only. So I could just call by status. I could say data item policy dot by status and pass in this value. But I put a helper because I figured active is almost always going to be the one that we're doing. So I might as well just wrap it. But there might be somewhere else that we want to get one of the other ones. So I did make this public. And essentially all we're doing is passing in an expression that... it's fun that Ace Flameseer is here because you're the one that I think asked the question about... were you the one that asked the question about functions and actions in Jeff's stream this morning? You might have been. And it's funny because I actually, in order to work with Entity Framework Core, not only do you have to do a function of t of bool, but you actually have to make it an expression of function of this because of how the queryable, the iQueryable interface works. That is heavily used by Entity Framework and a lot of other things in .NET. So in order to extract it out, I not only have to do a func of t of bool, but it has to be an expression of func of t of bool. So, but this is hidden at this point, and because I know a lot of people, they'll see like expression func of t of thing, and their eyes just glaze over, and it's like, yep. Sometimes when I'm looking at it, I'm just like, I'm not sure what you're doing. So the nice part is, I hide this in here. So if I were to go look at where this is used, you'll see why I like this approach. Actually, it ends up being a little ugly because of my poor naming. I am actually going to do something I should have done a long time ago, which is I'm going to rename that to simple response message just so it's a little easier. And I might actually rename that to simple policy also. No, I'm going to leave it. Okay. So essentially all I have to do... Hey, good morning, Magnus. So all I have to do is say, hey, call my repository, say list, and then pass in whatever policy I want to give it. And that's basically all I have to do in order to make this work. I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, wait, it's running. Yep, it's not going to like that. Also, my rename apparently didn't get everything. Oh, that's why. So I did a rename, but I hadn't actually added in the single that I added before, because I was going to show you guys how to do that. Okay, so, because I got distracted by the policy. So, essentially, this is a very simple wrapper that we have here. And all we have to do to make this work is now say single or default, and I mean I can async this also, and I can actually just say spec.criteria and return this. So you might be saying list is get all combined with find. Basically, yeah. My list method is essentially grab all the items and apply a filter to it. But the reason it has to be that expression of func of t of bool of t is that what we want to do is we want to make sure that the criteria we pass in can be done as part of the SQL call. So if we were to connect this to a database, we wouldn't pull all of the items out of the database and then in memory apply our filter. So that's why we do it this way. So just in case you're wondering why that had to get complicated, that is actually why. Now someone that looks at this might be like, yeah, since I'm basically just applying these criteria to this, I essentially have a simple wrapper around my app data, data context. Instead of iList or... So the reason why is because... So when I return an item, unless I have a reason to restrict it, I like to give myself the most useful thing that I can. So that's why my return value is a list. Technically what I should do is here I should take an IEnumerable, because I don't need anything other than an IEnumerable. If that makes sense. So this is the most useful thing I could return, is a list, because that list that I return is an IEnumerable and it's an iList. So I've given the most power that I can to someone that calls this. So that's actually why I return a list. Taking one in, I didn't really need that, so that's why I changed it. Oh, that's funny, because I passed back the same one. You know what? I'm not going to pass back the full list, because I don't want to pull the full list. So I'm actually going to change my interface here. Even though we'd written it the other way. I think that's a little nicer. Does that answer your question, Magnus? Does that make sense? Feel free to disagree with me if... That is a list of those. I'm calling create on that. You do not need IDs on create for return value. Yeah, so I could. My create list, if I wanted to return it, then yeah, I could pass them back and I would have the full set of IDs that I'd put on those values, which is why I return the item on the create method, is so that I can give back the item if it added one. This generic repo is just kind of shoved together right now. It's not really in all that great a shape. I will admit that one. Okay, so that is that. Wait, this was building, right? No. What is it not like? That T needs to be changed to a list of... Oh, it still thinks this is the other one. Because it could be a T. That's hilarious. But it's not a data item. That is hilarious. So, let me show you what's happening. Yeah, so this here, because the type is a list, I think if I as enumerable, it would not yell at me. Whoops. I think if I did that, yeah. Which is kind of dumb, actually. So, because it got confused because my T could possibly have been the one that it wanted to use. Either way, so based on that, I'm going to switch this back to a list and just say, because your collection is in memory, I'm going to just force you to have that one, because if you can't to-list that, I think we've got a different problem, and I'm primarily just using this for creation of my fake data anyway. I don't think we're ever really going to need, in the domain case, the ability to create an entire list of these at a time.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Hey, Demartiro? Maybe it's 2 words? I apologize if I messed that up. If I did, just let me know in chat, but thank you for following. So anyway, jumping into what we are working on here, I'm going to commit this off screen really quickly while we do this, but some on stream changes. We'll call this database tweaks. Look, you guys get to see me commit. Isn't that nice of me? Yeah, that error coming up totally does make sense. I get where it's coming from. I don't want to complain. Like, yes, it's kind of annoying from my perspective, because I was like, yeah, I could make this work this way. But it just wasn't going to happen. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to look at is we talked about responding. Hey, I just use it for committing, by the way. And you laugh, Magnus. But literally, I have the Pluralsight course on GitHub for Windows. I've actually had it for years and years. The icon on the bottom right of the screen. So I could show you actually. That is a jar. So technically, when someone follows, it should drop a little thing in there, and I don't remember if it did or not. But if someone cheers, it'll drop stuff in there and other things like that. Oh, the course, I mean. Did someone gift it to you? The course, I mean. And what's the icon on the bottom right of the stream? Still confused, Magnus. Not sure what you're talking about.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Hey, thank you for following. I am going to mess up your name, but I will attempt it. Farad Flucht, but that's my guess. So, either way, thanks for following. And we're going to go ahead and take a look. So, what I wanted to look at is this. The first thing I want to do is create a class that is going to take in our... it's going to be similar to the command handler that we created before. Oh, good. I got kind of close. Thank you. Yes. Native English-speaking American, so I will do my best. Okay, so we set up a simple handler to deal with commands. For now, I'm just going to create a follow handler because I think that's a large enough domain concept to merit its own class that is specific to the fact that someone might follow. And not just do, like, say, a stream event handler where we would respond to follows and other things like that. I think follow is specific enough to do this. If it turns out that we want to combine the class for follow as well as, say, subscribe and other things, we can do that. So that, I think, is where we're going to start. And yeah, I am just going to put this right in the root for now. The command handler has a set of commands, and it has a command handler takes in chance. Okay, so we had this be the piece that actually had the event happen based on a set of chat clients that were received. So I'm going to do the same thing here, which is to create a constructor. So we are doing a set of chat clients because we want to be able to connect not just to Twitch, but to any other chat client that we want to use. And then within that chat client, so this is why we created an interface for it. So we want to be able to handle Twitch as well as others. So our Twitch one, we're going to wrap it and make it meet this interface. But if we do the same thing with Mixer, for example, we want to be able to wrap it and make it use this same interface so that we can use it the same way. So the only event we have on here right now is the on command received event, but we might also want to have the on follow, on new follower. Shout out names if you guys have opinions on these. So new follower event args. So we're going to go ahead and make an event args for that. Do you generally follow any rules to order events, methods, and properties? I guess I don't have a set of rules on that one, except I usually like to group the methods, events, and properties as methods, events, and properties. Like, I don't care about the order that, you know, it could be properties, events, methods, properties, methods, events. I'm not worried about that part as much as I am try to keep them together because it's a little easier for me to follow. I'm fairly against having to put in regions, and that's mostly because I kind of sit there and I'm like, if you got to the point where you needed to put a region around your events and properties, you might have a class that's a little larger than you need it to be. But that's just me. Okay, so the only thing I can think of that we want today on our follower event args is just the name of the follower. So I'm going to say follower name, just so we never get confused down the road on whether that is the name of the event or the follower name. Together as in cohesive related properties. So when I say together, I meant like putting all the fields and things together like that. In terms of being cohesive and keeping them next to each other, if I made a property that had a backing field, for example, I would put that field directly next to the property, not say with other fields that were in the class. And yes, that is correct. You can configure ReSharper to automatically do some document formatting when you save, or if you are using the developer productivity tools, which is, I forget, is that what they're called? Productivity tools? Productivity power tools? Yeah, productivity power tools, which is an extension in Visual Studio. That can also do some basic reformatting when you save files. So, for example, I think one of the formatting choices that it has is to remove usings and sort. You don't see Decephalus asked a question in chat. Grouping them. Oh, okay, yeah. so that it put all the... Yes. I believe that is one of the cleanup things it can do under coding reformatting, or maybe it's under style. Why didn't that pop up? Code cleanup. Okay, so it's got various things it can do based on this. So you can configure a lot of what it does. You can do some of these as automatic, or you can actually go and do some basic formatting. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put this in its own file, and I want to try and get this wired up today if we can, unless you guys want to work on something else. Let's see, so we set up that as an event on our chat client, so all the chat clients now need to have this event on them, which I'll get to that in a minute. Our follow handler is going to work similar to our command handler, and what we're going to do is we're going to loop over it, and we're going to set up that event. So I'm going to do a for each chat client. 1 second, guys. Chat clients, and then we're going to say on new follower, and I'm going to just make that a new method. Okay, maybe it was posted in the subscribe room. I don't think so. It's right in there. Maybe refresh the stream there, Magnus. You might not be getting the Twitch chat or something. Here, let me know if you see this. So I typed a message into chat. Let me, if you don't see my message in chat. Oh, you see my message, but you don't see. I promise you, there's someone else talking to me. Anyway, and I'm not even the one using like Mixer and Twitch, which always throws me off when people are doing both of those. And I'm just like, wait, what? Who you talking to? Okay, so cool thing. So I'm a big proponent of C# and using what if follower is not named but email or ID? Might not be. I guess it could be email or an ID. I'm figuring name just gets me whatever it is. If that site uses a username or a full name, I'm not terribly worried about it. So for now, I'll stick with that. If we do end up needing to handle those, we can pretty easily add it to the event args. So that's why we're using an event args instead of just a string. The other thing that I did here is you'll notice that my since we did this as an event, we have an object sender. I want to point this out just because it is relatively new to C#. I think 7 is when pattern matching was added. So in the past, this code was always possible, so you could just say sender is a chat client, and then that's going to return a boolean and allow us to use this. But with C# 7, they added in the ability to do pattern matching, which will return us the same value. So essentially it's checking to see if the pattern of our object, or if our object matches the pattern iChat client, and since it does, we can then immediately store it in a variable. So this is actually, if you notice, just looking at the highlighted piece here, that is essentially a variable declaration. So within this scope, we now have access to chat client, which is of the type you think it is. So I want to go ahead and just make this respond and say welcome new follower event args name. Thank you for following. Okay. So essentially now it should, when we get one of these, automatically reply and automatically just post into chat and say, hey, you know, thanks for following, welcome. And that should work, I think. Nothing about that seems crazy. And the reason we're doing this, so if someone follows us on Twitch, I want to make sure we reply on Twitch. So that's the reason why we're doing this sender business and making sure that we're using the same chat client that they came in on. That way, if someone follows us on YouTube or on Twitch or on Mixer or wherever we end up connecting our bot, we want to make sure that that is where we get the response from. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Twitch chat client, which doesn't have that event yet. I'm going to go ahead and add it. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go up to where this one was wired up and wire up the same thing. So you'll notice what we did here is the Twitch chat client actually has built in a so this is a wrapper around the TwitchLib chat client. I mentioned that we wrapped around that before, and I should also mention tomorrow we're going to take a look at TwitchLib because we had to look into how it was doing some things. No, not yesterday, Monday I think it was, and we noticed there were some issues with it, and so we want to take a look at the TwitchLib code and see if we can't clean it up a little bit. Go ahead and fire away, Magnus. What's your question? It is Friday still, and it is in the afternoon. It's 3 p.m. I take it based on your question, you must be in the faraway land of Australia or something like that. Friday, 22:15. So I'm going to go ahead and say Europe for... oh, yes, Eastern Europe. Yeah, Eastern Europe, you may have crossed that line already too, so... Oh, yeah, no. I missed my stream yesterday, so that's why we're doing a stream today. So I was not able to stream yesterday. I had some things come up, so I was just like, hey, I'm not going to stream today, so I'll stream tomorrow. So that's why we're here today. But I will be streaming again tomorrow, which is Saturday. And actually, that schedule should always update to your time, Magnus. So if you're not seeing that, giving it to you in your time, let me know, and I'll figure out why Streamlabs isn't getting that right. Okay, they have got to have followers only on... wait, hang on. Twitch client. Is this... do they seriously not have new follower? I figured follower had to be one. To be honest, I didn't even look. Yeah, no, I wasn't on yesterday. Sorry about that. Well, that's amazing. Okay. So, I told you that we were going to add this. However, we're not going to be able to do that just yet. So, if we're going to want to do this, what we'll need to do is... we'll need to add this to TwitchLib, I think. Because there's got to be a way to tell that we got a new follower. Yeah, so we could do new subscriber if we want to set this up. So we'll set up new subscriber. I'm kind of astounded right now, actually. Okay, so I'm gonna say on new follower. We're gonna rename that, so don't worry about the fact that I'm calling the wrong one. And I'm gonna make a 2 new subscriber event args. Whoops, that is a method that we're making there. you asked questions. New subscriber, there must be an event. You get events on your tool when someone follows. Yeah, so I want to set it up so that we have an event for followers, but since I can't complete that one yet, I am going to make new subscriber event args. If someone wants to dig into TwitchLib and figure out where that is, I would not complain. New subscriber event args, but if not, then we're going to be digging into TwitchLib tomorrow anyway, so on new subscriber. So I'm going to jump back over here. We're going to duplicate this. So I made this extension method on event args so that we could switch from that is hilarious, from the essentially from the TwitchLib event args over to the one that we want to use. What I mean is the tool you use for your stream must get that information from somewhere. Yeah, exactly. So it is accessing the Twitch API to get that information, I believe. And it's actually connected, sorry, by the Twitch API, I mean it is connected to the IRC. Hello and welcome, Yaflow9. Welcome. So that's going to be on new wait, no, those are mine. No, these are theirs. So on new subscriber event args, this one's not going to have a command, but it should have the subscriber. Subscriber display name. And we don't want to return that. We want to return new subscriber event args. What's the TwitchLib? So the TwitchLib repo is, whoops. I will go ahead and post it in chat.
What a lovely day!
Hey, thank you for following. It is at, well, github.com/twitchlib, but I'm actually going to post it because that's a little easier. So all of the various pieces are there at TwitchLib, and you can use that link to take a look. There's Swifty Spiffy, is, as far as I know, the main person that is maintaining that, but there are a handful of people that do work on the TwitchLib. This is basically just a .NET package, so a NuGet package that lets you connect to all the various pieces of the Twitch API, which is very useful. It was funny, I was looking to see if this existed somewhere when we were going to be writing our chatbot, and I was like, yeah, if it doesn't exist, we'll start it. If it does, we'll just use the one that's out there and contribute back to it as needed. So there was one, so hey, we're using it. And we'll be looking at this tomorrow because we dug into the code a little bit and noticed there was some weirdness in there, and we were kind of like, yeah, some of this stuff is kind of messy. So, I mean, it, you know, like with our code and anybody's code, whenever you're working on a project, it's a lot of, yeah, I can get to that later. So, lots of cleanup to do. So, I'm actually just going to call those event args. That way, if I copy and paste a third one, then I don't have to do any more with that. So, new subscriber event args on new subscriber. Okay. Yep. Yeah, if a developer tells you that all the code that they ever write is clean and wonderful, they're lying. I can tell you there are actually a number of projects I have worked on where I am genuinely genuinely proud of the code that I wrote on that project, and I'm, you know, and I would be happy to show people that code were I legally allowed to. And there are a number of projects where I can say, yeah, I'm proud to have built that code. But then there are a number of other ones where I would say, I'm proud of that piece there and that one over there. There's, you know, some mess in the middle, or I'm proud of an aspect of it. Like, I really like the way that we did, you know, the unit testing in this one, or, you know, the way we structured this piece. But if someone says all the code they write's good, then I'm immediately like, really? Like, who are you then? Because, man, you're much better than I am, apparently. So, okay. Welcome. Thank you for subscribing. My favorite name is quality of code is defined by the WT. Yes, exactly. So, my general motto is that I try to leave code better than how I found it. So, what that means is, at least to me, is when I go into something, I try to fix something up. Now, I create a new piece of code, it doesn't need to be perfect. Like, I write a new thing, like, I don't need that code to be perfect. But if I go back in there and mess with something on it, I at least want to have fixed up a name, or, you know, something like that, in some way cleaned it up, extracted a method, or, you know, done something to make the code a little better because I was in there. So you may have noticed, I mean, just to add to that, like, I added a new extension. Hey, welcome, Necrosia? Apologize if I didn't get that name right, but thank you for following. So, the change that I made, and we've got a chain, and RW Grimm, thank you for following. So, I fixed up the first part, the first extension. So I was in here, I added this one, but you'll notice I still took the time to clean up the other one that I'd worked on before and was like, yeah, that could simplify a little. So, yep, WTFs per minute. It's how much is someone going to freak out. I think other people will point out, like, you want to have the lowest surprise factor. You don't want anybody to be surprised when they see some of your code. It should be obvious and easy. So, because I did that switch, I want to do a quick little check here. Okay, so we still call this the follow handler, so I'm going to call this the subscriber handler. Hey, Magnus, thank you for following. Also, have a fun song. Appreciate it, man. Okay, so let's see, chat client on new follower. So we're gonna rename this because we don't want to have the word follower anywhere in here anymore. So Magnus, just so you know, because you did subscribe, there will be an emote soon. I have an artist working on it. I think it's a fun one. So the tier 1 is going to be a hype emote. So if you are a regular Twitch user, I'm sure you know what hype emotes are. The plan is that tier 2 and 3 people, if anyone does ever... Hey, welcome Chaos Theory. If people do pick those up, those are the ones where you can laugh at me, so I'm going to probably have a derp and a fail emote, so that as I screw up, you guys can have a nice way of making fun of me. So... Oh, you okay, so, in a lot of chats, they'll have a hype emote, so I'll give you an example of one. So, that didn't work right. Yeah, man, I fail horribly right there. So, DevChatter, because I sent it in with the wrong account. That one might work, if it actually went through. Yeah, it did, okay. Yeah, see, my chat wasn't updating either, so I actually didn't even see my own message there. But that's a hype emote. Examples of other hype emotes include... they're basically just emotes of excitement and cheer. So whenever you want to celebrate, hey, something worked, you can use a hype emote for it. So we'll have something kind of like one of those, except I have a cool idea for what we're going to do with it. I think you'll recognize where the inspiration came from. The artist is supposed to have some designs for the emote completed in the next few days here. So once those are there, I'll get them in there, and you should definitely be able to use them soon. So new subscriber event targets. I'm going to change that rename file, and I think we got everything. I'm going to look for the word follow. That one's in there. Okay. So those are good. So the word follow's been cleared out of there. So now I would say, and this is a hilarious thing to suggest, if anybody has an Amazon Prime account and they are just itching to use their Twitch Prime reward, if you do have Amazon Prime, by the way, and this is actually something that applies whether you subscribe to my channel or C# Fritz's or anybody else's, every month you get basically a subscribe token, is probably the best way of describing it. Twitch Prime, which you get free when you have an Amazon Prime account, lets you subscribe to a channel once a month, and then that gets you access to their emotes and other things like that. So it's a nice way of supporting the channel. So in theory now, if someone subscribes, because the bot's running and we've got this new concept of responding to a subscription, we should actually get those responses. So I am going to go ahead and commit this and say adding on subscribe event, which I think is a pretty apt description of what that is. I actually should mention, because you guys commented the hilarity of using GitHub for Windows, or GitHub Desktop, whatever you want to call it, is that I actually mainly only use that for commits, and I like it for commits because I like having a graphical diff. So I'll use GitHub for Windows or GitHub Desktop, or I've used SourceTree before, a number of others. But then for doing anything other than a commit, I use Git Bash or a PowerShell window or something like that, just depending on where I am. So I have Git installed both in, I can use it in my console, I can use it in Git Bash. So for example, this is where we are right now. I have this running, and for diffs, if I'm just doing something small and I'm already in the command line, I will just do my commit and my diffs from the command line, Magnus. If it's small. But if I have something more serious than that, I will jump over to GitHub for Windows and use the diff in there. I'm pretty used to it, and the other thing that I like about it is that it tends to match what I'm going to see when I'm on GitHub looking at a pull request. So that's the other reason that I like it for that. But I've been on the command line forever for these tools. I was actually an old Mercurial developer before the GitHub, or I should say before the Git Mercurial battle was eventually decided. So I've been, I've used a handful of them, and obviously do like the command line. It's nice. So, okay, I am going to, oh right, that'd fire that again. Okay, so, no, I'm not an SVN fan, nor am I a CVS fan, and I should specify that I actually, So I did actually use SVN for quite a while. I actually used TFS for a while as well. But I like... there are a number of things I liked about SVN. It really wasn't bad, but I'd much rather be on Git, because there's so much more you can do with it. So... And I don't want to bash TFS either. It really isn't that bad, but it takes a very different paradigm. Okay, so we've wired it up so that we can do that. Yeah. Let's go ahead and make a folder for events, because I do think we ended up with a number of event-related things. I think it makes sense to have a core events. So I'm going to drop all of those into events. Hey Rex, thanks for stopping by. So I'm going to go ahead and make that modification to these. And yes, it's only 4, so I'm going to jump into each one and just make a quick modification. Why did that not want to help me? I like it when my tools just do all the work for me. You know, I really need to... So at some point, I'm going to make it so that bot actually gets deployed to some other spot, and during the stream, I can put it somewhere else. Revisualize. We are working on a Twitch bot that we've actually been working on for a little while now. And we're just building in some basic structures to make it work. So we just added the ability for it to respond in chat when someone subscribes to the channel. So that is kind of fun. This is a C# project. We're using .NET Core, and we're using C# 7.2 for whatever that's worth. And yeah, so that's the fun stuff we're doing here. So if you are a .NET dev and you like C#, then why not stick around? I'm also going to... And also right now we're doing a little bit of code cleanup just because we reached a good point to do a pull request. So we're going to do a little bit of code cleanup and then do a pull request. So right now I'm just moving a few things around. I'm essentially trying to make it so that our namespaces and other files are in places that make sense. One reason I should mention that I am doing so we're using EF Core Magnus. One of the reasons why I'm doing these changes here is that I want to hang on. I want to try and get it so that Git knows that these are renames and things like that. So that's why I do those as separate commits. It makes it a little bit easier for Git to figure that out, because I don't want to go and individually on each one of these stage the change as a move, because that's a pain in the neck. And Git is smart enough to just intuit that, hey, yeah, you didn't change this file, so I think it's a rename. So that's why I'm doing these this way. I don't have a good spot for the iChat client to go yet, and bot main I haven't messed with either. Okay, so a couple of things. So Magnus, you asked a really good question, which is that we are using EF Core instead of EF6. There's actually something I want to talk about with that is kind of a neat little thing that I want to mention. This code is sort of lying to you. We're cheating a little bit, and I want to show you how and why, because it's really cool. But hang on, let me revisualize his message here real quickly, because it's a big one. So you are a network system administrator that started a career learning a little web dev. Interestingly, I actually was a server administrator for the beginning of my tech career, and did web dev on the side, and then finished college and switched to web development. So similar thing, it's hard to not do a little bit of dev regardless of where you are. So then you got forced into a job doing customer service up to tech support, help desk, yada yada, network systems, and currently trying to figure out how to drive your career forward. And one of the big things I would mention, so there's a lot of things in tech that you can do. I love web dev. It's a vast, growing industry. So if that's the direction you want to go, I would steer you towards that path. There are jobs for web devs and tech people and administrators anywhere that you live. One of the other recommendations, which I'd actually give to you and pretty much everyone, I would attend your local user groups. So there'll be meetups and things like that of local tech people. So if you go there, I wouldn't go there and be like, hey, I'm looking for a job, hire me, because that doesn't usually encourage that. But what you could do is go there and meet some of the people, and I can almost guarantee you that someone there has a job opening somewhere in some kind of tech thing. And then additionally, it's a good way of both getting to know those people, because it's better to go in knowing someone, but also it gives you the chance to find out what types of things are around. And yeah, as Magnus is mentioning, remote work is also available for us everywhere, so it's really easy to be pretty much anywhere. So part of the reason I mentioned this revisualize is that at least so many years ago I started a user group called Hudson SC. It's a software craftsmanship group, and we started the group because a bunch of us were trying to figure out really good ways of improving the code we were writing. And the way that you can get the buy-in for this sort of thing from your company is you can pitch it as, hey, it's a great recruiting tactic. So over the years, we hired devs straight out of our user group. So like our company ran the user group, sponsored the user group, and we hired people that would show up and present and have ideas, suggestions, things like that. So we actually used it as a recruiting tool. So some companies do that as well. So from the company's perspective, recruiting tool. From the people's attending, it's a nice way to work on code and talk about things with other people. So there's always that as well. Yeah, so in terms of like remote work and things like that, so the funny thing, this is why I laughed. So I know a number of people here are also watch the C# Fritz stream, which I'm a big fan. He has a really good stream, so if you don't already, twitch.com/C# Fritz. It's a very good stream, quite fun. But one thing I want to mention about that is he did a hilarious thing. He had a number of guests on his stream, and I thought it was really hilarious because he did a stream where he had Saduki, Sarah Dukovic, and then he had me on as the next guest, and then like a couple of weeks later he had Steve Smith on there, and I laughed about that because he had this guest list, and he'd been talking to me, and then he talked to Sarah, and he slotted her in before me, and then was like, yeah, I want to get Steve on there also. And it's funny because like Sarah lives like 2 miles that way, and then Steve lives like 5 miles that way. So we talk about like remote, but it's just hilarious because it's like, no, I mean, like, yeah, like I could work with these guys wherever, but like, no, they're like right around here. So I thought it was funny that Fritz pulled in like 3 guests from like the same city. So it was good. It's just like, yeah, let's get that whole region. So, okay, so back to what we were working on here. So I talked a little bit about that. What did I change in here? Oh, yeah, those can disappear. Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you guys about how I was lying to you about my EF Core stuff. So we are using EF Core, and I think this is fun, so we're going to take a look at it real quickly. I'm going to show you how the EF Core stuff is set up in here, because it is a lie. So we're looking at the ugly part that I need to clean up. I just refreshed and I don't think I was seeing... Yeah, revisualize. Twitch has been messing up today. I know a number of people were commenting that they weren't seeing other people's messages, and actually I wasn't seeing them on one of my accounts either, so there's something weird going on their site right now. Maybe they pushed an update, I don't know. But anyway, so what I wanted to show you guys is the bit of lying that we're doing. So you might notice that I create my repository right here by passing in a new data context. And in my data context, I have this options as part of the constructor. So this is the fun part. If you've not seen this before, I create some DB context options, and we're passing in app data context. Hilariously revisualize, despite the fact that there are tons of gigs there, I actually, I'm not sure that that's the easiest place to actually grab a tech job, just because it is such a center of tech companies. There are quite a few large ones there. So anyway, so here's the trick. So I mentioned that we were lying. We're actually just using an in-memory database right now. So basically what this means is every time we restart the application, we actually have a completely fresh database that we're creating from scratch. So that's why my little fake data generator thing takes in the repository and initializes every single time. Because when the app spins up, I'm just shoving that data in there. This was my replacement for, we originally wrote the app, like it just had this hard-coded in memory, and then we're like, no, we'll store this in some files. And then I was like, you know, we're going to want this in a database eventually, so why not, instead of storing it in files, why don't we just, you know, put it in an in-memory database? And then at any point, I could just decide I want to put a local DB in here and connect that, and then our connection string can just be to a local DB. Or we could connect to Azure if we eventually put it out there. Yeah, see, I figured, Magnus, that probably at least someone hasn't seen an in-memory database. So the reason you might do an in-memory database is if you want to do an integration test without having an actual database. This is a neat trick for how you could do this. For lines and vertical for horizontal dots for lines and vertical for curly braces. Oh, okay, yeah, so these vertical lines right here, that's, I believe, just coming in from Visual Studio now. The productivity tools give that to me. So that is an extension that I have installed in here. And I don't remember which one it is. Because the way that productivity tools works is, if you take a look at this one, I will go ahead and pull it up. The productivity tools is basically a package that just grabs a bunch of other packages. So I forget if it was from this one or if it's coming in from just base VS 2017, but since you're asking, I'm assuming it's from these. So the productivity power tools just install a number of other extensions for you. It's basically just a package around the other ones. So you'll notice I have a number of extensions, so things like middle quick scroll, double click to maximize, copy as HTML is actually a very useful one. The other thing that it's doing that you guys may notice, if you'll notice, the tabs are color coded up here and organized by color. So those tabs are also set up by my productivity tools. The colors are actually grouped by project inside of my solution. So if I pull up the productivity power tools, I can show you guys how that works because it's kind of cool. So my color coding scheme is listed here, so you'll notice that it's using these tab colors. So it has that first one, that second one, and third one are displayed up there right now. But that's how those work. And then the other thing you were commenting about is the horizontal dots. That's actually showing white space. So if I put a tab in here, you'd see an arrow instead of the dots. I have used visible white space for a long time now. I long ago accidentally turned this, turn visible white space. Ah, there it is. Okay, so the keyboard shortcut to turn it off is Control RW. So RW shows the white space if you want to turn that on. So just hold Control and hit R and W, and that's how that'll work. Okay, so those are some cool things that are in there. Yeah, so I mentioned we're using an in-memory database, which is kind of neat. The other thing that we have set up is hey, welcome. Thank you for following Abdullah 320, looks like 320. So the cool things that we're doing also, so we're running .NET Core, which if you run a .NET Core console application, one of the first things you'll notice is that the ASP.NET Core team is really the main driver of .NET Core, it really feels like. So I'm a big ASP.NET guy. I love ASP.NET Core, and I've used a ton of it. And one of the things that I always run into is there's some extension, there's some package that I want to use that's just baked in automatically on ASP.NET Core, and they just kind of were like, oh yeah, you're going to need this, and you're going to need this, because of course you're going to have configuration, of course you're going to have this. So there are a whole bunch of defaults that the ASP.NET Core guys get that when you're just running .NET Core aren't in there. So you run into constant problems of things like Microsoft Extensions configuration, for example. You're like, oh, I need to actually put that in there in order to have our configuration. So our configuration right now is set up right here. So we're grabbing this configuration, which we build in this little method here. And hey, it's been 15 minutes, so the bot said hello. So see, our bot is running and working. So the other thing, we use a configuration builder, and we grab our configuration out of appsettings.json. So that's basically a JSON file that we can use to get our configuration. And then over here, you'll see that we just say configuration, and then we say .get, and we pass in a type. So if you take a look at this type, you'll see that it's just a set of properties, and nothing about this class has any idea that it's a configuration class. So you'll notice there's no class attribute, there's no properties, there's nothing weird about this, which is great, because yeah, see, Magnus asked the right question. What is add user secrets? So what's nice about this is if I need to test something and I need to pass in my settings, I can just create a new instance of this class, pass it in, it's fine. There's nothing weird here. But then, additionally, so Magnus caught the interesting thing, which is that I add user secrets. So one of the new things that .NET Core built in is this idea of user secrets. So I should have this wrapped in like an if environment is dev kind of thing. But because I'm not in ASP.NET Core, I'm in just .NET Core, it's a little more complicated for me to get what my environment is. So the idea of being in the dev environment comes in from an iHosting environment, blah, 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 variable, things like that. It's automatically dependency injection wired up by ASP.NET Core, so it's super nice for them. It's not quite as nice for us, but we can do the same kind of thing. So essentially, what we're able to do is just say, so I should have some kind of check here to see that, yes, I'm running on my computer, and we don't, yes, it's basically like, can you not do programs in .NET? Yes, so I could do like an if debug or something like that. There's all kinds of ways around it, Magnus, that I could get away with. So I could just do a preprocessor if debug kind of thing. So then in production, it wouldn't use this. So anyway, so user secrets is a fancy little thing. And what it does is it makes it so that I am going to be brave and open this on stream. So I opened up my app settings, which normally I would be frightened to open here because my OAuth token would be listed right here, and you guys would all be able to log in as the bot and just do whatever you wanted, because the OAuth token would be there. So you could just connect and, use that account. But I don't want the OAuth token listed there. So, in fact, here locally, I don't even have to list these. I could just get rid of those and the bot will run just fine. But what it does is, it says to use my secrets instead. And so what it actually did, and I think it's safe to show you guys this piece, this is my secrets ID. So this GUID here defines a file that exists on my system. So essentially, the secret manager right here, this CLI tool reference here, this is going to create a file under my app data directory, and inside that file, it's going to let me store my secret information. Yeah, it's kind of like a config transform, except there's a little bit of complexity to how it's doing it. So there is another JSON file stored on my computer that's not inside of this Git repo, so that I don't accidentally commit my OAuth token. And that's where I'm able to store the secrets that I don't actually want to commit by mistake. The other advantage for me while streaming is that you guys won't accidentally see my OAuth token, and I won't have to, go change it because I screwed up on stream. So that's nice. And since we are talking a little bit about .NET Core, I'm going to explain. Yeah, I actually like it a lot, Chaos Theory. It's a nice way to keep those secrets hidden. So it's very good for making that work. So, anyway, so you were asking if this was kind of like a config transform, Magnus, and I will get to that answer and say kind of. I mean, we're sort of doing it at runtime, so there's some tricks here. So Configuration Builder is a fancy little thing that lets you build up your configuration. So, and it's really, now the interesting thing here is that it's really the last item is the important one. So, if I were to change the order of these, so let me modify this code and we'll take a look at it. So if I decided that I wanted to add in the secrets and then add my JSON file, what this would mean is that I first add in all of the secrets information, and anything I defined inside of that JSON file would be part of our config. If my appsettings.json had any of the same properties, it would actually override what was in my secrets file. And so that's why it's important that I have this correct ordering, is because it's really going to be whatever one is last is going to have priority. So the significance here is that in some organizations, you want different settings for your developers than you do, say, in production. So some organizations I've worked with will end up with their in production, they might have some items, instead of being configurations, they're stored in environment variables. I forget how you add the environment variables. There's an extension for it, I bet, that I'm not including up here. So essentially the idea is that I could have some properties coming from environment variables, some properties coming from JSON files, and some properties coming from user secrets. The other interesting thing is that I can actually add more than one JSON file. So I could add, 5 different JSON files if we have a lot of different settings. So each one of those could be something like, these are the Twitch settings, these are the Mixer settings, and then I could access them like that. and so just adding in new files that way. So it's kind of nice. No problem, Revisualize. Welcome back. So yeah, that's sort of how that works. So it is sort of like having the config transform, except you know, a little bit different. So, and we do it at runtime, so you can make decisions based on that, and it is able to be modified pretty easily. So let's see, anything else we want to talk about or mess with before we end the stream? So I'm not planning on going too much longer today because I've got a couple of things I have to do, so I was going to actually wrap up about now. Config transform, not as far as I know, Magnus. Wasn't that always done with like on publish back in the day? Maybe I'm thinking of something else. So config transforms back. Yeah. I'm not able to say that word. Config transforms were always, when you'd publish, it would send up the correct file. It would basically apply the transformation to your config file and send that up. So unless you're talking about a different thing, which you might be, okay, yeah. Alright, I was pretty sure, because I'm like, you might be talking about something else, but yeah. So in an ASP.NET project, you used to do that. Okay, so a couple of things I want to talk about before we wrap up here. Obviously, this is a .NET Core project. It is a console application right now. There are a couple of things I do want to add to it. I want to talk to you guys about that, get you thinking about it. So if anybody is interested, you can start thinking about how we want to do this. But I do want to build a web interface to this, even if that's not the primary running bot piece. The reason I want to have a web interface on this is because of how OBS works. So OBS is the software that I actually use for streaming, and even if you don't use OBS, you use some other similar streaming software for doing a Twitch stream or a Mixer stream or a YouTube stream or whatever it is you're streaming on. And what they do is they usually have some kind of way to show a browser on screen. So that's actually, if someone follows or something like that, when that alert pops up, that's actually a browser display there with a transparent background that's actually always there, and you don't see it. So there's actually a transparent browser in the middle of the screen, whoops, up there, yeah, to my upper left, and in the middle of the screen there is that rectangle that then just gets filled in with something when it's time to display. And so what I want to have happen is I would like to set our bot up to have achievements. So essentially people in chat can reach achievements. So maybe on your 10th time showing up to the stream, we pop up a thing and say like, hey, so-and-so, got this achievement. Now with those ones, I want them to probably be silent, because that kind of thing, you could have a bunch of achievements happening. So like you could have a little section reserved to like popping up achievements, from time to time, like Magnus, something, and like I don't know what the achievement would be called. It would be like, something like, Deca something or other, the blah blah blah, because it's your 10th time here, and so it'd have that, and then have your name listed, and so those kinds of things, or and have it be like this little achievement thing. And so then, because it's running as the bot and not, yes, exactly, asked your 100th question, posted in chat for the 100th time. But then what you could do is you could give a command to the bot, and you could say, like, achievement, you could type in, bang achievements, and it would respond back with, your most recent achievement or something like that, or your total number of achievement points. Maybe you've got like 50 out of 100 possible achievements, and the bot would tell you that. And so because it's not just a web interface, but it's also the bot in chat, you could talk to it that way and get both levels of interaction. So that's kind of the thing that I'm thinking I want to eventually build into it, which I thought would be kind of fun. So that's our goal for that one. I want to do my wrap up and call outs to everybody here, because we are going to wrap at this point. I wanted to thank everybody for following today. There were a good number of you. So thank you all for that. I wanted to thank C# Fritz because he gave us a nice host today. So thank you, Jeff, for that host. A couple of other things I want to make sure I mention. The background music, which I hope you guys have been listening to this whole time, is Relax Daily. And relaxdaily.net is actually, they have some free music that is what we're listening to, that they are cool with people using for streams and things like that. That is what we've been listening to. I actually listen to Relax Daily while I'm working. I also listen to music to code by, and also various other music, but that's what we're listening to here. If you were here for the intro, there was some music playing that was custom composed for our channel. Just fun little music, so if you haven't heard it, you can check out one of the videos and listen to it at the beginning. It plays for a few minutes before I actually hop on here, because usually I start up the stream just so people can start gathering before I'm actually all set up with all my software running. And then who else do we need to thank? Oh, obviously we need to thank Magnus for subscribing. So welcome to the fun club. We'll have an emote for you as soon as we can. We only just got our Twitch affiliate status I don't know, this week? Yeah, I'll say this week. So this is our second stream since having the affiliate status. So that's kind of fun. Our next stream, which I should make sure everybody knows about, is tomorrow. It's actually going to start about an hour earlier than I started here today, a little more than that actually. So it'll be 1 p.m. on Saturday. That's 1 p.m. Eastern time. Magnus, you are, and someone else talked in chat a little while ago, I think. That was actually the first person that cheered, although you can see that on top. That's Crimson Green. So yes, you are the first sub, Magnus. And our bot's still running because he just said, for everybody to follow. So thank you. That's awesome. And as I said, so tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Hey, thank you, God Tisu, for following. Much appreciated. Yeah, that's the plan. We're working on that bot, and I do want to mention one other thing. Our other project that we're working on, which actually you can see a lot of this information down below if you are on the website, so you can scroll down and take a look at that. But our other project is a soundboard for Twitch streamers. So it actually is a cool little app. We're going to run it just as a system tray icon. I'm not sure how frequently we'll be working on that versus the bot, and at some point we may merge them, but for now it is just a little system tray icon, and you just press keyboard shortcuts and it plays sounds. We're going to be building the configuration for it so that someone can customize what sounds and what keyboard shortcuts you press, but at this point I think that's just going to be a bit of fun sometimes when we don't want to do that. And I should mention tomorrow in our stream, we are planning on working on the TwitchLib project. That is an open source project on GitHub that is actually what we're leveraging to communicate with Twitch using our bot today. So we're going to take a look at that tomorrow. And yeah, so thank you all for hanging out. Thanks for talking. And hopefully you had some fun coding. And we will catch you tomorrow. So have a good day. And have a great weekend, everyone.